Greetings from Brother Stephen. I'm a disciple and witness of Jesus Christ. To all the inhabitants of the earth, I present to you as a witness this gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson today, titled Not Translated in the Bible, and you'll understand this title here shortly. We're still going over Genesis chapter 1, verses 1, correctly translating that one verse, because if you don't get that first verse right, you just completely will not understand the rest of the Bible, which has happened to a majority of the world today. So again, we use the Blue Letter Bible for a study tool. And when you go to the Blue Letter Bible and click in Genesis chapter 1 verses 1, that chapter is going to open up, and then we're going to click on this Tools tab and open up the Interlinear tab so we can see the Masoretic text that this King James Version Bible Oxford edition of 1769 is translated from, and how they translated it. So again, this is that Masoretic text that the King James Version Bible Oxford 1769 version is translated from, and this is how they translated it here. Now, I brought this up in the last lesson. As you can see, when you read the Masoretic text, it says Barashet bara Elohim atah. But then when you read the King James Version Bible in the Hebrew, in the order in which it is translated, it says Rashet Elohim bara. And as you can notice, the Bet is missing from the King James Version Bible translation. The Elohim and bara, which is Elohim and created, is switched. And then this Hebrew word or name, atah, is completely missing from the King James Version Bible. And we're going to blow this back up here. And as you can see, here's that Hebrew word atah, and they just have an arrow pointing up. And they don't have a word that they have translated this atah into. And that's what this lesson is going to be about today. So the next thing we're going to still do is click on that Hebrew reference number 853 and just kind of read what it has to say. There's that Hebrew word atah. I'm sorry, I said atah. 8. You'll understand by the end of this lesson why I said atah here shortly. And we're going to scroll down. One of the first things you notice, and I just pointed to red so it stands out, it says not translated. Not translated in English. And then as such, unrepresented in English. So again, what we're focusing on, we'll try to figure out, is what does this 8th mean? And the first thing we're going to do to figure that out is look up the Hebrew alphabet and figure out which letters they are in the Hebrew alphabet. And I already done that for you. This is the Hebrew alphabet. It is the Aleph, which is the first letter in Hebrew, and the Tas, which is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the first letter and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Next thing we're going to do is take these two letters and just translate them back to the from the modern Hebrew to the early ancient Hebrew. And this is the chart again, just in case you forgot. Here's the Aleph and the Tas. Again, that's that first letter going back to the L, and the Tas going back to these cross sticks. Now, and then that's what we have here. We have the L and the cross sticks. And so basically the way you will read this in the ancient Hebrew is El crucified. So that is the meaning of this Hebrew word 8. Now, in the last lesson, we talked about El. We said El is the head of Elohim. And so basically what this is saying is El is going to be crucified. The head of Elohim is going to be crucified. And of course, we know that that head already is Christ who come and is crucified. So next we have here, we're going to Isaiah chapter 41, verses 4, because we're still figuring out and trying to use other Bible scriptures to confirm that the first and the last is El, and that El is going to be crucified. And again, what is this first and this last letter in Hebrew, this word eighth means? Because they said it's not translatable. So next, we're going to Isaiah chapter 41, verse 4. It says, "Who hath worked and done it, calling the generations from the Rasheth, I, the Lord." And again, this word Lord is Jehovah. We want to talk about that name also in this lesson. The first and with the last. I am He. So here we have that first and the last. And when you look up that Hebrew reference number 3068, it is not the Lord, it is Jehovah. So this is Jehovah saying, I'm the first and the last. So this first and this last symbol, this or the word eighth, means Jehovah. So while they're saying it's not translated in English, we can see this is pretty easily understood what it means in the Bible. It's Jehovah. Now from here, I'm going to go to Isaiah chapter 44, verse 6. And it says, "Thus saith Jehovah, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Jehovah of armies." Here we go again. I am the first, I am El. So now we have Jehovah saying he is El. And I am the last. In other words, so Jehovah is saying he's the El that is going to be crucified, the head of Elohim that is going to be crucified. And he said, "And beside me there is no God," or no Elohim. And basically all that means is this, that the reason there is no Elohim beside him, he's saying he's only one. There is one Elohim, there is one El, there is no other gods besides El and Elohim, who is one with the Father. Of course, they're not beside each other. El and Ohim is one body. They're connected. There's no other gods that's not connected to Christ. So now we're here at Isaiah 48 and 2. And it says, "Hearken unto me, O Jacob." Again, that J does not belong in the Bible at all. If you look up Jacob in the concordance, if you look up Jacob in the concordance, you'll see that the correct transliteration is Jacob, not Jacob. So hearken unto me, O ye Jacob, and Yisrael, my called. And again, Jacob is Israel. So hearken unto me, O Israel. I am He. I am the first. I am El. I also am the task. In other words, he's El that is going to be crucified. Now, basically what we're going to focus on, because we have a new name, which is this Jehovah, and then we're going to figure out the meaning of Jehovah. The first thing I want to show you again is that if you look up Jehovah like we did in Isaiah 41 and 4, as you can see, just like in the last lesson, that word God used to replace several different names with several different meanings. We kind of have the same issue with this word, the Lord. Because as you can see here, the Lord here comes from the Hebrew reference number 3068. And then when you go to Exodus 15:2, you have the same the Lord, but it comes from a different Hebrew reference number, which is Hebrew reference number 3050. And then when you click on the Hebrew reference number 3050, you get Yah. But when you click on the Hebrew reference number 3068, you get Yehovah. And I'll pull this up really quick just so you can see. That's that 03H3050, and is Yah. And this is where people get the name Yah from. It is short for Yehovah. Now, just to have here again, why this word Lord should not be used in the Old Testament at all, because if you remember in the last lesson, it was used to replace Adonai. In this lesson, we see that it's used to replace Yehovah and Yah. Again, Adonai appears 434 times in the Old Testament. Yehovah appears 6,519 times, and Yah 49 times. And they take these three words and they replace them with the one word Lord. One word Lord has one meaning and one meaning alone. These three different names has three different meanings. So they should not be replaced with Lord. These words should be transliterated into English and adopted into the English vocabulary so people can understand the Bible. So from here, we're going to Exodus 15:2, because here we have the first time Yah again is used in the scriptures, and that's again up here, Exodus 15:2. So we know it comes from that Hebrew reference number 3050. So Yah is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God. Now, if you remember, this Hebrew reference number 3410 is from the last lesson. It is El. So basically, the reason we're reading this verse is so we can understand who Yah is. And this verse let us know Yah is El. It's just have a different name. Now, some people might ask already, why does God have so many different names in the Old Testament? Well, he has so many different names in the Old Testament because if he did not do this, men would have easily been able to falsely translate the Bible and deceive people. But if you are seeking God with your whole heart, he said, ye shall find. So he made it where we will be able to find out exactly who he is. So again, with that being said, Exodus 15:2, Yah and El is the same person. And again, El is the head of Elohim. Now the next thing we're going to focus on here is taking the modern Hebrew Yod and Hey and translating it back to ancient Hebrew, and you get this hand and arm and this symbol, which means like it has three main meanings, which is look or behold, reveal, and to breathe, like to resurrect, to give life. So basically what we have here is the meaning of Yah in ancient Hebrew means the creator of life. So, and of course that makes sense that El is the creator of all life, all living. So basically when we take this word Yah, it is equal to El, who is the head of Elohim. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take, like we just took the word Yah, we're going to take this word Yehovah. We're going to translate Yehovah back to ancient Hebrew so we can understand what Yehovah means. Now, we already translated Yah, which is El. We know what that means already. It is the creator of all living. El. Next, we have the Vav and the He. When we translate that back to the ancient Hebrew, it is a nailed and resurrected. So basically what you have here is El, the creator of all living, nailed, or you can say crucified, and resurrected. So Jehovah actually means the exact same thing as the first and the last. You have El being crucified. Jehovah means El, crucified, and resurrected. Now, if you look at that again, we have El, crucified on the cross, and Jehovah, we have El, he's nailed to what? The cross, and resurrected. But Jehovah and eighth, the first and the last, it means the same thing. Now from here, we're just going to Revelations 22, 13 and 6. We're still focusing on that first and the last. Verse 13 says, I am the Alpha and Omega, and I have that here, Alpha and Omega. We went over the Alpha and Omega in previous lessons on this YouTube channel. Then he says, I am the beginning and the end. We go through what the beginning and the end means also. The beginning is the Rashet. The end is that Akra'ath, which means this is a prophecy. This is that prophecy being fulfilled, has been finished. And then you have, I am the first, which is El, and the last, which is God crucified. Now, in Revelations 22 and 13, you want to wonder and want proof who is saying this. And to answer that question, when you get down to verse 13, verse 16, it lets you know. It says, I, Jesus. So this is Jesus talking, saying, I am the Alpha and Omega, the Rashet and the Acharet, the first and the last, El, crucified. And again, this is all stuff coming from previous lesson. The name Jesus comes from his Greek name that he was given at birth, and this is it. It is just still pronounced Jesus. So basically, all I have here is a diagram that you have Jehovah saying he's the first and the last. You have Jesus saying he's the first and the last. And the reason you have Jehovah from the Old Testament saying he's the first and the last and Jesus is because if you take Jesus' name and translate it back to Hebrew, it is not Yahashua, it is Jehovah. Jesus is Jehovah. He is the God, or El, that is crucified on the cross and resurrected. Now the next thing I have here, just to confirm that, if you take that Greek name Jesus and you translate it back to Hebrew, this is the Hebrew word. And now you will pronounce this Atah. When you take off the Hey, if you take off this symbol here, this is eighth. But when you add this symbol, it is pronounced Atah. When you take these three letters, as you can see already, this is the first letter in Hebrew. This is the last letter in Hebrew. So Jesus, when you translate it back to Hebrew, is the first and the last. And this is that symbol Hey. So when you translate this back to ancient Hebrew, and this makes perfect sense, Jesus is El, who was crucified and resurrected. So, in other words, Jesus, eighth, Atah, Jehovah, they all mean the same thing. Now, if you took that name Jesus from English and translated back to Hebrew or Greek, you will not end back up at Atah, and that is because Christ's name simply is just not Jesus, it's Jesus. And this is why Christ saying the pronunciation or the iota and the tittle will never change. And that's Matthew chapter 5, verse 18. The word jot does not belong there. It's iota and tittle. Now, again, just to confirm this with more scriptures, when you go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 17, it says, now we know this is Christ, Jesus Christ. It says, and when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. And he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, fear not, I am the first and the last. So here you go. You have that Aleph and the Taz, which in ancient Hebrew is El crucified. This is Christ again saying, I'm the first and the last. When you get to verse 18, it says, I am he that liveth. He's El. And was dead. How did he die? He was crucified. And behold, I am alive forevermore. So even Revelation chapter 1 verse 18, it pretty much spells out Atah. Christ is letting you know what his name is in Hebrew. He's saying, I'm El, crucified and resurrected. I'm the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. This ancient Hebrew symbol here actually means one of the two, again, the three meanings of this word is look or behold, reveal, and like breathe, so to give life or to resurrect. So now, another thing that I want to point out, since we on this Hebrew name Atah, that Jesus translates to in Hebrew, not Yahashua, this is actually a Hebrew word in the Bible. Here's that first and the last and the Hey, the Aleph, Taz, and Hey. God crucified and resurrected. And you pronounce this Atah, and it is Hebrew reference number 859. Now, as you can see here, it says Atah occurs 11 times in 11 verses in the Hebrew concordance. So we're not going to look at all 11. We're just going to look at a couple of them so we can see what is Atah means in the Old Testament. And so here we are, first verse. We have Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, thou. And as you can see, there's that 859. Now, all thou means is you. When you go to Genesis 31:6, it says, and ye know that with all my power I have served your father. Again, this word ye just means you. So you have thou and ye, which both means you. And then we have Ezekiel 34:17, and as for you. So, and again, that's because thou, ye, and you all means you. Now, this might be extremely confusing to a lot of people because you go, what do you mean Christ's name in Hebrew means you? Well, you means God crucified and resurrected. But now, what I'm going to do here, we're going to go back to that word 8 that is missing from Genesis chapter 1 verses 1 and from the entire Old Testament that they saying was not translated or unrepresented in English. And what we're finna do read now here is going back the Strong's definition. It says 8th, and I'm sorry, I can't hardly see this that good, so if I mispronounce some of these words, I'm sorry. Apparent contracted from H226 in the demonstrative sense of entity. So they're saying this word represents some type of entity. Then it says here, properly self. So when it means self, it means you, self, you. So when you read this at first, it might seem a little confusing, but when you go back and realize that when you look at this word, the Hebrew word atah, and in the Old Testament, atah represents or translated as you, Then when you look at this word eighth and it says it properly represents self, it makes sense. This word kind of means self or you. And so basically, what does this mean? To explain it, just go to some more verses. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17. It says, if any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple you. If you translate this word you back to Hebrew, it's going to be atah, which temple atah are. Our bodies are the temple of Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19. What? Know you not that your body is the temple? Remember that tent of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which you have of God, and you, and self, and eighth, or atah. This is that you are not your own. Why? Because you belong to atah. You bought with a price. So hope you understand that. And just in closing, I will mention it again. Christ's name is not Jesus. It is Jesus. Jesus, Atah, eighth, Jehovah, all means the same thing. El, crucified and resurrected. He's the head of Elohim. He's the head of God the Father. And with that being said, this concludes this gospel.